Hello folks, just a quick one. I'm watching this video, it's comparing Israel attacks versus Hamas attacks. Now my contention is that Hamas is Israel. Now what this guy is saying. So all of the rockets get intercepted by the Iron Dome. Right. So that's supposedly Hamas. Now here's when... So that's a Hamas rocket hitting an empty building. Right, okay. So now this is in somewhere where it's supposed to be going off. There's the title: Tensions High in Mixed Jewish Arab Cities in Israel as Gaza conflict rages on. So this is Mickey Rosenfeld, and this is the, I think it's CBN. So I'll reiterate what he says in case you can't hear it.
And all this is happening while rockets are falling all over central and south Israel.
That's correct. The situation down south for the Israeli police, we're still responding to rocket attacks that are taking place. That is another important perspective where our units are still responding to. We saw just over the last few minutes several rockets that were fired into Netivot, a large city just to about 42 kilometers from the Gaza Strip. In Beersheba as well, we saw rockets that landed in Beersheba, and unfortunately I can confirm that over the last few minutes also rockets that were landed in the local community where 10 people were injured, mostly Thailand workers, foreigners.
So did you hear that? He's saying mostly Thailand workers, foreigners were hit. Now, the Iron Dome doesn't stop just because it's daylight. So those rockets were obviously being fired from Israel, because the Hamas ones aren't getting through, and if the Iron Dome doesn't get it, then it'll hit empty buildings or such like. So again, my contention is that Israel is Hamas, because this question, is Israel funding Hamas or supplying them with arms, it never gets addressed. But let me just get a bit further on into the video and it gets even more interesting.
We know that at least one person, I can confirm unfortunately, was killed there, and we have several others that are being treated at the scene and evacuated to the main hospitals. So a lot of police activities going on both down south, dealing with the rockets and the threats of Hamas, and at the same time our border police units and special patrol units.
So they're dealing with the rockets and the threat.
That are responding inside the cities to keep the areas safe.
Many that I've talked to, many Israelis are almost more concerned about these riots and the disturbances than the rockets. The rockets they've dealt with for years, but the riots, talk about that, about what this means for Israel.
So the reporter is saying that most of the Israeli Jews, I guess it is, are more worried about the riots than the rockets. Again, doesn't that kind of reiterate that the rockets aren't a threat? So why are Hamas concentrating on sending rockets, knowing that they haven't got an Iron Dome to answer back with?
Israelis. Well, there is a complete breakdown in the relationship between Israeli Arabs and Israelis, and that is something that has stemmed from Israeli Arabs, unfortunately, and that is something that we're going to have to deal with over the next couple of weeks, at least ahead of us. At the moment, in terms of police activities, our units are located all across the country, from the north to the south, from Akko to Wadi Ara in the Israeli Arab communities in the north, central Israel where we are at the moment, as well as down south all the way towards the area of Beersheba. Geographically, we're spread out all across the country, but it's going to take time to build up the relationship again. It's going to take time in order to improve the situation. But our main concern at the moment over the next 24 to 48 hours, as the Israeli IDF Gaza operation is continuing and we are dealing with the Hamas, we are still seeing tensions inside Israel.
Now, tensions, I can go back to the Northern Ireland tensions, when it works out that the same sort of bombs and same sort of threats were coming from the IRA, And it turns out that Martin McGuinness, the leader of the IRA, he's only best mates with Henry Kissinger. And the next thing, they're with Nelson Mandela. And who's Nelson Mandela getting looked after by? He's getting looked after by Ephraim Mervis, who's the chief rabbi of UK. Well, his father. And supposedly Mandela was being kept like a rat in a cage, chained up and all this nonsense. And on his day of release, he's dancing on stage at a rock concert. So he made some sort of amazing recovery there. But, you know, what I'm trying to point out is, like, wherever there's terrorism, you know, as Henry Ford spent 400,000 to come up with the one single phrase, wherever there's trouble in society, you'll always find a Jew busily working away. So what I'm saying is that Israel is Hamas, and let's look a bit further.
That's why there is such a mass deployment.
How would you describe it to people that are outside what it's like to be living under constant rocket bombardment?
Did he just say that's why there's Hamas deployment? It's a setup. The whole thing is fabricated to annihilate the Palestinians.
The situation very serious.
Look at this.
Indeed.
Look at the sky. It's perfectly clear.
On major cities, the Iron Dome is succeeding in.
That's got to be the Iron Dome, because there's Iron Dome in action, right?
120 Hamas rockets being fired in towards the area of Tel Aviv. There's no doubt be one or two rockets that
So
will
he's saying one or two get through out of 120.
We've seen that, and our units are the first responders, our bomb disposal experts that arrive at
But
the scene.
why aren't the Iron Dome? This was the point I wanted to make. The conclusion, as it were. Why aren't the Iron Dome rockets hitting at source? If we just go back just a little ways there. See, there is the source, isn't it? There's the source, right? But Iron Dome hits them over here.
One or two rockets that will make their way and strike the larger cities. We've seen that, and our units are the first responders, our bomb disposal experts that arrive.
It was actually back at the...
Bomb shelters.
The situation very serious indeed. Rockets are coming down.
You know, not like
these
people to be melodramatic, is it? So
there
you can see, right? Now watch this. They actually start to show. There, look. There. They're getting intercepted in the air. Can you see the explosions in the air? But they're not attacking the source. Well, why wouldn't they be attacking the source? Well, who's manning at source? Who are the people who would be firing the rockets? Of course, they're not going to attack there. You know, they're not going to get away with the old friendly fire issue there when it comes to bombing their own. That's my synopsis anyway, given the facts, you know, reading between the lines. They're all right saying that they're doing all this and they're doing all that. But the point is, there's, what do you call it, holes in their arguments.
This is something that we are going to continue to deal with.
And they've done it time after time after time. The constant ambulance chases, the internal victims. So that's my point anyway. I'll load this up now.